Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellency, the President of the 77th Session of the United Nations General Assembly, heads of states and governments, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It's a great honor and privilege to address the 77th Session of the United Nations General Assembly here in New York today. At this particular challenging time in human history, I welcome the important theme of this session, which direct us all to find a transformative joint solution to the various interlocking challenges we face today. There is absolutely no doubt that today we as a community of nations collectively face the most challenging socio-economic and environmental situation we have experienced in the modern history. In fact, I can say with sadness that the situation is dire and potentially existential. Therefore, without transformative and urgent implementable solutions to these interlocking challenges of our times, the small window of opportunity we have to act together will pass to the detriment of all our citizens and the world. Our actions today will surely determine our fate and that of the generations to come. The burden of all our shoulders is heavy, and failure is not an option. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, most of the world is still recovering from the devastating health and socio-economic impact of the global COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic was unprecedented in its impact on the daily lives of all citizens across the world, in that it changed the way we live forever and clearly presented how unprepared the world is for such shocks and disruptions. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic painfully illustrated how far apart the world is in the development and the ability to respond to such huge crises through the top-down distribution of the vaccines, with richer nations being able to invest in the distribution life-saving vaccines more rapidly for their citizens, while the developing countries like Somalia waited for whatever was available and they could afford were gifted by the international partners. While this vaccine inequally is symbolic of the existing developmental divide between the developed and the developing world, we as a community of nations understood that we must and can stand together to overcome even the greatest challenge if we have a strong global system of cooperation, collaboration, and action. In this regard, the Somali federal government is grateful to all the dedicated medical professionals on the COVID-19 frontline and bilateral and multilateral partners who supported our national effort to vaccine our people and provide protection for their livelihoods through the difficult COVID-19 crisis. Today, we must ensure the global inequality of the COVID-19 vaccine is not replicated with the looming food security crisis. Our world is becoming less secure through recurring conflict and increasing international terrorism and the destructive impact of the climate change. I cannot prioritize between these three interlocking challenges because they are equally as dangerous and directly harmful. Any progress we made anywhere in the world on achieving the vital UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. In fact, these complex and interconnected crises are the drivers of today's unprecedented international humanitarian crisis: food insecurity, rapid urbanization, and the burdensome international cost of living crisis, which is pushing most of the world's population into a poverty. Indeed, we are at the unbearable juncture in human history where citizens are looking to their respective governments and international multilateral system to provide meaningful policy response which are anchored on transformative and sustainable solutions. Accordingly, We as a community of nations must be more optimistic and work even more closely together rather than retreat to nationalistic isolation, which does not and cannot serve our global citizenry in this new age of interconnectivity and interdependency. In Somalia, we are working tirelessly to transition from over 2 decades of devastating conflict, droughts, famine, and developmental stagnation to a new age of stability, progress, and prosperity. However, despite our continuing effort, Somalia and its resilient people are facing some of the most complex and interconnected crises in the world. The crises include ongoing regional droughts, which is directly threatening the lives and the livelihoods of Somalia's most vulnerable communities. In fact, our government has called on all its business community, diaspora, and international partners international partners to work with us to do everything possible to avert a possible looming famine. We urge all our partners to heed our call and work with us to provide immediate support and relief to the most affected communities. In the long term, we must collectively work together to ensure that we mitigate the acceleration of the dangerous and costly climate crisis through meeting the commitment to invest in and adequately finance climate adaptation in most affected and vulnerable regions of the world, including sub-Saharan Africa. Key areas of investment must be sustainable water management, biodiversity protection to enhance food security, climate-smart agriculture, resilient infrastructure, and most investment in renewable energy. In Somalia, for the first time, we've established a new Ministry of Environment and Climate Change to lead on the urgent process of addressing the devastating impact of our national and regional environmental deterioration. Somalia is caught between floods and droughts annually owing to climate change and poor infrastructure. Our people, who have a long tradition of living harmoniously with the nature and parallelly contributing to poisonous emissions warming the earth, are the ones that are paying with their lives today. We are therefore taking the matter of protecting our environment seriously because we know climate change is real and we are living with the evidence of its painful and destructive reality today. We also know that Somalia and the rest of the world cannot develop sustainably without the global climate crisis being jointly addressed quickly and effectively, because our whole way of life and most importantly, job-creating productive sectors of our economy, including agriculture, livestock, fisheries, and the wider blue economy, depend on the climate. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, terrorists are making our world less safe by the day. Terrorism remains a persistent and complex challenge which both contributes to and exacerbates all other crises, including food insecurity, displacement of people from their homes, and climate change. Terrorists have no religion or human values. They are violent criminals who seek to simply terrorize innocent people. We must continue to stand up to them with all our collective strength and effort. Nowhere in the world has there been an example of terrorist organizations succeeding against a united governments and people, let alone govern justly as they falsely claim. The most important lesson we have learned in the long modern war against international terrorists and the terrorism is that neither can be contained or degraded. They need to be comprehensively defeated.